Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast. This is Bruce Hutchin, host and executive producer. Each week you will hear tips, techniques, strategies, and personal stories from some of the best and funniest whitetail hunters in North America. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you do, tell a friend on social media. If not, tell me and I'll make it better. Thanks for listening, folks. On today's show, we're going to enjoy an October trick or treat with Tom McMillan. And Tom McMillan and Michael Waddell have teamed up to create something called Deer Week. Now, Tom's on the Sportsman Channel and Michael Waddell is on the Outdoor Channel, and they're going to have a whole week of nothing but whitetail. The good, the bad, and the ugly, if you will. And you're going to have to watch the show. It begins October 15th through the 21st. But Tom promised me that there's going to be plenty of laughs. You know, and Tom, he's a guy that never left West Central Kansas. A lot of people graduate from high school and want to head to the big city, go to Wichita, Kansas City, or Denver. But he just stayed home because he liked the lifestyle. Yeah, he liked ranching. He liked riding horses. He liked growing wheat. And he loved hunting the white-tailed deer in his county. So that's what he did. And he's carved out quite a lifestyle for himself. Yes, he's a personality on the Sportsman Channel. Yes, he has McMillan Outfitting. Yes, he has a family. Yes, he grows crops and runs cattle. He's a busy guy, but he sure loves what he's doing. And I think after the show, you're going to find out, just like I did, he's got a big sense of humor. Stay tuned. It's a great show. Hey, folks, I'm visiting with Tom McMillan, and he runs McMillan Outfitting in Kansas, actually someplace south of Interstate 70. But having said that, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hey, folks, and why Tom's spending about a half an hour with us this morning is that there's something called Deer Week coming up, and it's October 15th through the 21st, and he and Michael Waddell are going to be the co-hosts. So, Tom, let's start right off at the show. Let's promote what you're going to be doing and what you've already done, but what the show's all about, called Deer Week.
I tell you what, Deer Week is I consider it a celebration of this tradition and the sport that we all know and love so well of deer hunting. And not necessarily just whitetail hunting, mule deer hunting and coos deer, everything. So this is a celebration of deer hunting. All the history, all the heritage behind it. With that goes deer hunting stories about deer hunting camp. And so we just decided to get together, and it wasn't my idea. It was the Outdoor Sportsman's Group. They asked myself and that other guy. What's that other guy's name? Michael, was it?
T-Bone. T-Bone or something.
Yeah.
Isn't that T-Bone?
T-Bone's friend. T-Bone's friend.
Oh, T-Bone's friend. There you go.
I can't remember Michael's last name, but I think he's got a TV show or something. But
no, it's Waddle. Isn't it Waddle?
Waddle. That's it. Yeah, Waddle. I've seen him waddle to his tree stand before. But no, Michael and I have been buddies for a long time, and he's hunted here with me several years. And they asked him to be the host on the Outdoor Channel since that's where his show's featured. They asked me to be the host on Sportsman's Channels where my show, McMillan, is featured. And so it just seemed like, obviously, neither one of us, Michael or I, had to think about it very long. To celebrate deer hunting? Are you kidding? Yes, of course, we'll do it. And that's what it's about. It's just everybody gets to send in, their favorite episodes. Might not necessarily be the episodes from this television season. It might be one from year past. They get a lot of correspondence with the people that watch the networks through social media on, asking questions about what their favorite deer hunt was or what their favorite recipe for venison is. Talking about gear and tips and tactics and things to do or not to do. So it's just, a group effort by a lot of people that, hey, let's spotlight this awesome sport and this great tradition of deer hunting. And it's starts October 15th. It's going to be running simultaneously on both networks. And, Michael and I have already pre-taped some promos for it and commercials, and I think they've probably started airing by now. But so it's just, like I say, man, it's just all about deer hunting.
And that's great. And the channels again, please?
Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel. And I believe that even on Dish Network, I believe this month, if you don't normally subscribe to Sportsman, they've got a free preview going on this month. So hopefully, even if you don't get it, if you're seeing this or if you hear about it, you're still going to be able to see it. And so both networks, we're going to be doing it at the same time. Michael doesn't have any show on Sportsman. I don't have a show on Outdoor Channel, but the promos are going to kind of cross promote, if you will, and be seen on both.
And the dates again?
It starts October 15th and it goes for that full week. And I think it's going to start, I believe it's 7 p.m. Eastern on October 15th, every evening of that week.
And thanks for that. So, folks, I'll be putting out some posts on social media, and so when it gets closer and closer, this show will go up next week to promote it. So we're doing what we can to help these guys go because Michael Waddell and Tom McMillan, they're pretty much known in the industry for who they are, how they hunt, and basically how they relate to everybody. So it's kind of a cool thing.
We hope to, I think I can speak for Michael. We hope that we can relate to the common everyday hunter. I think a lot of people would consider Michael a professional hunter. That's how he's built his career. I do not consider myself a professional hunter in any way. I consider myself a guy that grew up working every day and doing a lot of different things to make ends meet, and my life path took me towards where I'm sitting here today with you. And I do have part of my livelihood is made in the hunting industry. It started 17 years ago when I decided to start McMillan Outfitting and start guiding hunts, and that evolved into other things like buying and selling hunting real estate. It eventually evolved into a television show that's on Sportsman's Channel, and now I get to do things like host Deer Week and be on these podcasts. So it's I'm not a professional hunter. I've spent my life doing it, but I've got a lot of other irons in the fire too. We farm, we ranch, we run a cow herd, and deal with quarter horses. So hunting is a huge part of my life for sure. And but I'm the professional hunter. I'm not. I try to do it right. I try to do everything I can to do it right and do it well. But I'm just lucky enough to know some professional guys and kind of be in their circles sometimes.
Hey, let's switch it up. And I know a lot of people think Iowa has the biggest buck. Myself, I've got one friend that hunts Kansas, and he kills big bucks. I mean, 180 plus deer every year for the last few years. He's been on deer. Has he got them? No, but I've got the trail cam pictures of the deer, so he was there. They just didn't show up. So let's talk about what makes Kansas whitetail so healthy deer, just like the deer you got behind you. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous deer. But people think of Iowa. They got to go to Iowa. Wisconsin doesn't do bad. I hunt Buffalo County up there, but there's something that I like about Kansas because it's not your typical quote unquote agricultural land like we have in Wisconsin and maybe Iowa and maybe the Illinois area. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that one thing that sets Kansas apart, first and foremost, I believe, the perfect blend of genetics, habitat, and cover, and the third thing being food source. If you have one of those three ingredients missing, you're only going to be able to get so high up on the ladder of what your deer herd can be. You've got to have good genetics to start with. You've got to have enough cover and low hunting pressure to let the bucks get older, get some age on them, and you've got to be able to feed them good. And Kansas is just a really good mix of all those things naturally. That's one reason I think over the last several decades, Kansas has just, increased in its ability to produce big bucks and produce trophy quality bucks at a younger point in their life. One thing that I've seen in my life, 25 years ago, when they implemented the CRP program, the Conservation Reserve Grass program with the government, that was just really for to take some agriculture acres out of production, so they weren't making as many bushels of grain and then driving the price of the grain down. That was one reason for that. The other thing was to stop soil erosion on some of the sandy soil we've got. But the byproduct of the CRP program, that they had no clue, I don't think, what was going to happen with it, it allowed so many big bucks to get older and older. Not because it's a food source. They don't eat the grass, but they bed in it and it's their home. Just about any 100 acre to 200 to 300 acre field of this CRP grass that gets 6 feet tall, if you can find it's about every single one of those tracts of land will produce and hold a mature whitetail in this part of the country. And he beds there, he lives there. He can stand up and be a half a mile from probably two or three different food sources. And, if he can survive a few years, then boom, you've got a trophy class animal. Now, that's not to take away at all from other Midwestern states that I know that everybody knows are have phenomenal deer hunting. Iowa, like you say, Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, the list goes on and on. And but they all have those things in common. They have good genetics to begin with. They can feed their deer, and the deer are allowed to get old, get some age on them. One other thing I think that sets Kansas apart and makes it maybe a little bit not better, but more user friendly, is it's open enough terrain in a lot of Kansas that I think I've always thought that the deer here are more huntable. If you're hunting a tract of land, let's say it's 1,000 acres of woods with no funnels and no pinch points and really nothing, those deer are going to be harder to hunt. And I know that terrain exists in Iowa, Ohio, Missouri, to where it's just acres and acres and acres of solid woods. And then they're dropping, acorns and the deer are feeding on that. So it's like, how do we hunt? They're here, but we can't get them where we need them to get them killed. Kansas, the deer, it's enough wide open, diverse terrain that they have to expose themselves a lot, especially in the winter months when it gets cold. They have to feed earlier in the day. They've got to stay out later in the morning, so they're exposing themselves a lot of the times. And I just have always considered Kansas a state that is it's more huntable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because I just made a note when it said 1,000 acres. The farm I've been hunting for 51 years is it's 1,000 acres, and then it's maybe 500 tillable. I'm just throwing out, but all the rest are woodlots. And you said
Yeah,
something, pinch points and funnels, and I thought, okay, the last buck I shot there, he was coming down, and there's an escape route that he comes off the ridge and he dives down for 200 yards, and then he bails into this really tight coulee, or draw, if you will. And we've shot a lot of bucks there because they just funnel. That's the funnel on the north side. On the south side of the road, there really isn't, funnels and pinch points. I mean, you've got to really figure out where the heck they're coming, but they really don't have to come that way where you get your stand unless they want to. They don't.
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
terrain, geographic formation that's going to push them, as you say, pinch points or funnels. So thanks for that, because I'll be heading there soon. I'm going to say, okay, let's really think about this. You know,
Sure. One trick that it's not just me. Anybody can really pretty easily learn it. You think, okay, well, how do you funnel a deer in the wide open spaces of Kansas? Well, there's a few tricks or things that you can figure out and pay attention to. Deer will travel fence lines. They will travel, especially the older bucks. They will travel lower ground, rather than crossing over the top of hilltops a lot of the times where crops come together. Deer are browsers. They like a lot of different kinds of food. If you can find where a irrigated circle of alfalfa meets another food source like milo or wheat or whatever, they're going to travel as little as they can to get as many different varieties of food as they can every night. And so they're all, you know, sometimes you can funnel the deer to you, but sometimes you're better off just watching where they funnel themselves naturally and hunt them that way.
now on CRP, let's talk about long distance scouting. Your guides or yourself go out, take your spot scope and hook it to the window, and sit there for a while, because you
Yeah.
sort of kind of know the movement, and you're looking for Mr. Wonderful, just like, the buck you got on the wall there. And do you use that technique a lot or not so much? Or talk to me about that.
Oh, I've countless hours and countless miles driving. Uh, we're just driving these sandy dirt roads, in the evenings, looking at our spots and seeing what the deer are feeding on now because they're their feed patterns do change throughout the year. Scouting for me starts in about the middle of the summer. Towards the end of July. I don't put out any trail cameras until about the end of August. I don't feel like why take pictures of them if you don't even know what they are yet, if they're not done growing their horns. But a lot of times in the middle of summer, the deer are hitting the green soybean fields. That seems to be their number one choice of food. So the greener the beans, the more likely it's gonna that field's gonna fill up with deer, in the evenings. So we do a lot of our scouting from the vehicle. You use the public roads, the dirt roads, and you watch the soybean fields, see what comes out to feed in the evenings. But as those soybeans mature, like we are doing right now in this time of the year, and they get brown and die and get ready to be harvested, the deer move on to something greener and lusher. And now people are planting wheat. So where there aren't deer feeding today, there will be deer feeding a month from now when that green winter wheat's coming up. And the Milo changes. I see deer feed on Milo two different times. When the Milo heads are coming mature and they're turning from the summertime green to the harvestable, hard grain Milo of the red, right there in that doughy stage, the deer really, really go to that food source at that time. And then they'll come back to standing or uncut Milo if it gets really cold in the wintertime because they need those carbohydrates. So, we do a lot of our scouting. To get back to your question, we do a lot of our scouting from the truck, just watching, glassing, not disturbing any areas. And as the year progresses and hunting season goes on and the food sources change, we're doing the same type of scouting from the truck. It's just in different areas where those food sources are.
Thanks for that, Tom. And, I'm kind of on a bent living out in Colorado as I do. I find where I want to go and I can look a mile away if I have the right glass with me or more. But
Oh yeah,
so many people want to drop down into the basin and try to figure it out rather than sitting there. You get a 5-day, 8-day hunt. It doesn't matter. You spent 3 days doing nothing but scouting, absolutely
yeah,
nothing but scouting. You leave your bow in the truck unless somebody commits suicide. You might want to have your bow with you.
yeah, yeah.
But having said that, I've tried to tell that to a lot of people, and you just sit there and you watch. That's all you do.
Mm-hmm.
Bring your lunch, sit there, and if you don't see anything, morning, noon, because elk do move a lot, mule deer do move a lot. They do bed,
Sure.
but you can see them because they get up and scratch off their bed and lay down again.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about that, then you got once you pinpoint them, you say, okay, how am I going to hunt them? You can figure all that out. You haven't even touched the ground. You get your maps, figure it all out, and then next morning you go in and get into them. Are you going to get them? I have no idea, but at least you know exactly where they are. You haven't walked 10 miles, 20 miles, or whatever, and
Right.
and the why I mention that is that I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to share the knowledge in Wisconsin because there's so many ridges. Like the farm we hunt,
Mm-hmm.
I sit on one ridge and I in a morning or afternoon or evening I can tell exactly what's coming out. And again, the food sources because that changes all the time. And
Sure.
so if nothing's there, I said, okay, they're not on his alfalfa field. They're just not going to come to it for whatever
Right.
reason. So the next morning you go up and you take it to the parking spot. You just sit there and watch, and all of a sudden you see something come out. You get your glass and go, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
And you put a mark on the map or in your book, your journal. So anyway, I'm trying to share that. I do ask people all the time, about long distance scouting. Nine Figure Chronicles, Dan Johnson, I think. I'm sorry, Dan, if I get your last name wrong, but he sets up observation stands, and he'll set up an observation stand just because he wants to get away from the road or whatever. But he'll set that up, and he'll be looking as far as he can see, a quarter mile, half a mile, and
Sure.
he'll just watch. And then he doesn't move on a buck until he sees them a couple of times. He patterns them, and then he does a run and gun technique. He goes in the night before the buck comes through. He goes up, puts a stand, gets the heck out of there, goes back in the morning, and then he says, I'll either take him in the morning at noontime between 10 and 2, or I'll take him in the evening, or I'm out of there.
Right.
Because he's hunting mature bucks. That's it. He'll take a stand down and he'll bail and he'll do it all over again till he gets on the right buck and the buck makes a mistake and, he harvests.
Yeah. I think I agree that, scouting should be more observing than disturbing. I mean, and I learned that the hard way. I remember, back when I was 10, 12, 13 years old, you thought you were really, really doing some good by getting in the bedding areas and looking around. And man, you could see where the trails were and the scrapes and the rubs and the beds. And you really thought you were in their nest, right? Right in their home, which you were, and which is a huge mistake. But it just felt so neat to be, you could just almost picture where the deer, how they were, you know, acting when nobody was watching them. But I learned the hard way that that is the last thing you want to do. If they've got a sanctuary, if they've got a bedding area that you know that they're going to, by all means, stay out of it. I've got leases that I never step foot in the bedding area unless we have to go in after a deer and that somebody's shot or that I've shot. That's, and it's fun to be able to see that kind of stuff and go, oh, this is what it looks like in here. And yeah, there is a lot of sign. But if you can, I try to preach hunt the perimeter. If you can stay out away from where the deer live, the perimeter of their nest, watch their habits and watch where they're going so you know where to be, then you're going to disturb less and most likely have more success with it.
How many yards away do you like to set up from a bedding area?
If there's no set, I mean, if we're just scouting, if we're just watching, just close enough to see, be able to tell what I'm looking at. It doesn't do you a lot of good if you're so far away that you're looking at a buck and you can't tell if he's 2 years old or 6 years old. So as long as you can not disturb, it doesn't matter if you're a couple hundred yards away. I've just because in certain situations, either it'd be a high point on, like you said, a riverbank, to where you can be within bow shot of a deer and see everything. But if they're not smelling you, if you're not disturbing them, it doesn't matter really how close or far away you are. It probably the absolute most important thing that I ever consider to think about when it comes to whether it's scouting or hunting, putting up a stand or whatever, is wind, the wind direction. What it's doing, what it's going to be doing. If the wind is wrong, don't risk it because you can't. I guarantee you cannot beat a mature whitetail's nose 100% of the time. That I feel that man today cannot make a product that will completely eliminate your scent because you're making scent all the time. Your breath or your sweat or what you had for lunch yesterday or whatever. Now there are products out there that do help. We all know that, but I'm going to be the first guy to stand up and say, "Oh, wait a minute! You said your product 100% of the time completely eliminates human odor." I'm going to have to call what on that because I just think it's impossible. The only way we can fight that is to play the wind and to make sure that the wind is in our favor all the time.
Let's switch it up a little bit and warm up of the show. Tom and I were talking about um, guest etiquette and real simple. You go to a place, you book with Tom, you show up, and I'll just use myself. And I go, gee, Tom, I've sat in the stand twice, and I saw the buck coming across the ridge. Why don't we just move the stand? And you kind of look at me cross-eyed. We'll have a little chit chat. So let's unpack that a little bit because I think that's important to all the listeners. They dream about going to Kansas or Iowa and hiring somebody, not DIY, but saying, "Hey, I made a couple of bucks, and for once, I want a shot at a 180 buck, a 150 buck, a mature buck. Let's just leave it on mature buck." And they come in, and it kind of goes crosswise a little bit. Let's share from an outfitter's point of view your thoughts.
Yeah, it can be honestly, it can be a tricky subject because a lot of people in the world put in their homework and they do their time and they pay attention and they learn and they're great hunters and they do their research, and so it's hard sometimes for people that have hunted their entire life, consider themselves knowledgeable, which they are, to go and relinquish all that to and put it into somebody else's hands and say, hey, just get me on a deer. That's hard to do sometimes because they might know in the back of their mind, that's not the way they do it at home, which is fine and dandy. But my point is, when it comes, if those discussions ever come up between myself and a client, I need to be open to suggestions too. Let's talk about it. Let me explain why I think the stand needs to be where it's at. That might be because it's the easiest to access. That might be because the majority of the time the wind is right for where that stand is there. It might be because for the last 20 years we've had success out of that tree and we've killed a lot of deer. Or it might be it was the best tree or whatever. So there, I don't have the time or the extra energy to just slap up stands and put them someplace that may or may not produce a good hunting opportunity. That's wasting everybody's time, including my own. So when I go about it, I set up every stand thinking, what is our highest success rate? Where's that stand going to be needed to be put to have our highest success rate throughout the year? And believe me, that comes from decades of watching these deer here and making a lot of mistakes, hopefully learning from some of those mistakes, knowing the history of what has worked in the past. And so when people come and they say, "Hey, it's just not, I just don't feel it. It's not really working out for me. I don't like that setup, or I don't like this setup, or that stand's too high or too short, or the way, we want to move it." Well, rather than moving that, let's get you in a place that you feel better about. And I had to learn from some of my clientele over the years approaching me that way. I had to learn how to be a good client myself in other places. I go on several hunts a year with other outfitters, for elk or antelope or whatever else out of the state of Kansas. And a lot of times they'll say, "Hey, what do you feel about tonight? What do you want to do?" I say, "Hey, I've chosen to trust in you as my outfitter and guide. I've paid you. I made the trip. Why would I start second guessing you now? You know, I trust you enough to write you the check and to come here to hunt with you. So I'm going to continue to trust. You know the land, you know the area, and so that's all an outfitter is going to ask is, hey, we're not just throwing up tree stands and putting out blinds for our exercise. A good outfitter won't, because our business depends on clients having success. You know what I mean? It's if you're a songwriter or a singer, it doesn't matter how many good songs you've got stuck away on a recording track somewhere. If you're not having success now, nobody's going to hear that stuff. My point is that if our clients don't have success every year, nobody's going to want to come next year. So our job depends on our clients' success, and we put a lot of, a good outfitter is going to put a lot of time and effort and thought process into where those stands are going to go. And whenever this discussion comes up with somebody like yourself, I think of a guy that I won't say his name because he might be watching this. He was a hunter that I had years and years ago, and he showed up in the driveway the first day of his hunt, got out of his rental car, and the first thing he said to me, I mean, I'd never met the man before. I just talked to him through on the phone, through emails, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Tom," he said, "I'm probably the best bow hunter you've ever met." And he was dead serious. Well, maybe he was, but I said, "Really?" I said, "Man, I finally got to meet the best bow hunter in the world." I said, "Perfect, another expert." I said, "Come on into the lodge. We got a whole lodge full of you guys." And he looked at me like he didn't know whether to, I was kind of jabbing him and was kind of kidding, but my point was, man, that's the wrong way to start off. I mean, and to be honest, him having locked in on that attitude, he was telling other hunters in camp what they were doing wrong. He was, if somebody else shot a deer, he was saying it was too young of a deer, or they made a marginal shot and just got lucky. And by about day 3, I had other clients coming to me saying, "Tom, as the outfitter and the head of this operation, you need to do something about this guy, or we're going to hang him from the rafters of the lodge by tomorrow morning." And so then we had to have a sit down, and have a little heart to heart. And I said, "Man, you chose me as your outfitter. You paid me. You made the trip from 5 states away, and then you get here and you tell everybody, including myself, what we're doing wrong and that we don't know how to hunt." I said, "How can you?" I think he was from West Virginia. I said, "How can a guy from West Virginia that's never been in Kansas know what the whitetails are going to be doing in my county? How could you possibly know what's going on here?" And it was kind of an eye-opening experience to him. And I will never forget the conversations I had with that guy. And it was seen by all. I don't think I was being too much of a hard ass on him, because my other clients were going, "Man, this guy, he's being it. We've got to do something, stick a sock in his mouth or something, or we're going to strangle him." But all I can say, my whole point is keep an open mind. And that goes for if you're an outfitter too. Nobody knows everything. You can learn from clients. But if everybody keeps an open mind and communicates about it, but then trust in the guy that you paid, trust in your outfitter, he wants you to tag out. If he wants a job in the future, if he wants to continue to do what he's doing for a living, he wants you and he needs you to have success. And I'm not saying that every single person out there in the world sees it that way, but I sure do. 100%.
The only thing I'll add to that, folks, is, and I learned this a long, too long ago from a rancher here in Colorado when I first met him and was hunting his ranch. And said, Bruce, you can come here for 10 years if you're a good hand. If you're not a good hand, I'll fire your ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was a straight up cowboy and bronc
Yeah.
rider, blah, 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 blah. But he just looked me, in the face and said, you make the decisions. It's here, but you got to be a good hand. What does that mean, folks? I have no idea. Tom knows, and
I,
other people know, because I'm not a rancher, never was a rancher, but
yeah.
I spent enough time with him and I never forgot that. I never
Yeah.
forgot that.
I think what he was getting at is you got to be able to, you got to be a steward of the land. You got to be able to willing to help him out, pitch, jump out, get the gate, make sure if he lets you go on your own, you open a gate, you shut the gate behind you so his cattle don't get out and run down the road or go over to the neighbors. You don't drive out across his ranch and leave muddy ruts, and you don't leave your trash out. Kind of common sense stuff. And it's like, well, if you can get out there and take care of yourself and take care of the land and his livelihood, that means you're being a good hand and a good guy to have around. And you talk about ranchers and farmers, that you are kind of interrupting their livelihood. They're providing hunting for you, whether it's you pay them or it's a favor or whatever. Deer hunting, believe it or not, folks, that's a resource. If it's not the landowner's resource, it's a resource from Mother Nature for all of us to enjoy. And so you kind of got to be mindful, and you've got to be respectful and take care of what's taking care of you.
Hey, I think we're at 30 minutes. How are we doing? We got 5, 10 more minutes?
You bet. You bet.
Okay. So let's talk about McMillan outfitting, where you are, if a person wants to come visit, muzzleloader rifle or bow, what it takes and what they should expect.
You bet. I started this operation in the year 2000, and right here in the county where I was born and raised. When I grew up, I've always been absolutely fascinated with Mother Nature and just being outside and hunting and fishing, the outdoors, everything. And all my friends, they were smart. We grew up hunting together, but the second we graduated high school, and even college, they couldn't wait to leave and go get jobs in the big city. And I was the exact opposite. I couldn't wait to get back home so I could go hunting. And now some of them come leave the city and come back and hunt with me. But my point is that I can never pull myself away from the hunting that we have here. And so my operation, McMillan Outfitting, is just 4 miles up the road from where I was born and raised. My family, my father and mother, they still have a cattle operation and still farm right down the road and all around us right here. And I remember in the year 2000, there was no outfitting around here. I mean, it just was unheard of. In fact, I'd heard that word, but nobody really. We had to look it up. We kind of like, what is outfitting? What is an outfitter? Why are they called that? If you're just out hunting with somebody, why are you called an outfitter? And it's actually my wife that said, you're going hunting every day. And as soon as you tag out, you're taking a friend or a friend of a friend with you and trying to help them. She said, there's a thing called guiding. Why don't you take whoever you can take and charge them for it? And I said, honey, that is an awesome idea. I'm so glad you thought of that. So kind of a roundabout way, that's what got me into guiding. And our priority, obviously, is whitetail. When we started out, I tried to grow the business as much as I could, and I had 3 full-time guides for about 3 or 4 years, and we did everything from upland bird hunts to waterfowl hunts to turkey hunts in the spring, predator hunts in the off season, whatever we could do to expose the name and the brand and get people in. And then things kind of evolved, and I I realized I could be more efficient with kind of controlling things more, keeping a hold of the lease acres that were premium, culling down my client list. We don't take very many deer hunters a year because I want because of McMillan Outfitting the deer hunting to be as good or better than it ever was. And so we have to control the amount of access that we allow hunters to go hunt our properties. And so it's just kind of evolved into, like I say, one thing after another. It evolved into the television show. And, when the idea about the television show came up, I thought that'd be easy because the cameras are just going to follow us around, right, and film what we're already doing. Well, that proved right there how ignorant I was to media, television, and everything about it. because I had to learn the hard way about how much production and everything that goes in managing people and schedules with filming and editing and all this stuff. But it still does go hand in hand with the hunting operation with McMillan Outfitting, and I think it's neat for people that might be from Louisiana or Florida or Missouri or anywhere in between that watch hunting shows, and they get to see other people go other places and hunt and have their story told. Well, now I mean, people that can come here to McMillan Outfitting, we film their hunts, and they look forward to going back home in a few months or a year later and watching it with their family, and having their kids watch them on TV and the deer they got or didn't get or whatever. And so it's kind of a way to bring that. I always call it the revolving door of McMillan Outfitting. All the people that come in and out and hunt with me. It's kind of a way to expose their stories and show what they do for a living and how they hunt and all that stuff. Their experiences here. And so it does still go hand in hand. Although when you throw in a full camera crew of 2 or 3 guys, and my days get a little bit longer by the time I get up about 4 in the morning, and some days nights I get to bed at midnight. By the time the end of rifle season rolls around, I'm ready to hibernate for a while. But that's not a complaint at all because I'm lucky to get to do what I do. I've made a job out of deer hunting, to be completely honest, and how could anybody ever complain about that?
I'm right there with you. I was thinking, do you set up double sets for the film crews?
Every
Oh
single
my
one of my
goodness.
sets, and I don't even know.
Oh,
I honestly don't even know how many tree stand setups I've got. But I use family tradition ladder stands. They last forever. They're super safe. So every one of my sets and a tree stand setup is exactly the same. We put up a ladder stand first, and then I'll put a lock-on cameraman stand above it. So that way we're not limited. Whichever way the wind's blowing, or if we see a buck in the morning go into this big tree line cruising a scrape line, I'm already going to have a setup in there and stick a guy in there, put a cameraman with him, and that way we can hopefully get it on film. So yeah, every single setup of mine is a double.
well, good for you because that goes to planning, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh, I got a ladder stand up, but oh, we can't get the cameraman in. We have to go in early, and
Right.
it
Yeah.
blows up."
And well, then you have a choice to make. Well, do you just do we forget about the cameras and because we still do treat people's hunts as the priority. I mean, it takes precedence over the filming. If we get it on film, great. That's going to be cool to be able for them to watch and see for the rest of their life and show people. But obviously, still they've paid for a hunt. We're not going to botch a hunt just to get it on camera. And so then, I always tell them like, hey man, we'll film the next one. You get in there, especially on a mature buck. You've got to take him when you have the opportunity because they don't come around every day.
That's for sure. Then again, if you want to share, if you don't, what's your average rate, rifle, muzzleloader, or archery for 5 days?
My hunts are 6,500 for a 5-day hunt, no matter if it's bow, rifle, crossbow, muzzleloader, whatever it is. And that's with meals, lodging included. This is my hunting lodge right here, and our normal routine is, we'll get everybody gathered up about 5 in the morning. Myself and the people that help me, we get them out to where they're going to go. They grab coffee or whatever they want, granola snack or whatever they can find in the morning when we leave in the dark. And I gather everybody up about 10 in the morning, bring them back to the lodge and the red hut. The girls make an unbelievable home cooked breakfast for them and gives people a chance to call home or get some work done on the computer, take a nap, watch the game. But then we're back out about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, hunt till dark, come back in again in the evenings. And the girls, once again, I learned a long time ago that a bad day of hunting can be made up for with some good cooking. And
And maybe a beer, wine, or whiskey too.
there might be some of that goes on from time to time. There might be. And that's part of hunting camp, though, isn't it? That's kind of the camaraderie
Yes,
and
sir.
talking about it and celebrating the hunt and the toast and the congratulations to when somebody does good. And you got to sit around that campfire, and if you have a glass of wine or a beer with it helps people, elaborate and lie a little bit more about the one that got away. Everybody gets the liar's circle, that fire ring out by the lodge out here, is the liar's circle. So
You should
anyway,
tape that. You should have a hidden microphone and camera and just see what happens. And
Oh,
that would be a great show, in
yeah,
my
but
opinion.
there's no network we could put it on. You know,
Well, you don't know.
it's maybe we need to make that network of just all the BS that goes along behind the scenes that
Yeah,
nobody can really show anywhere else.
yeah,
But
unscripted or whatever.
yeah,
That's a hoot. That's a
but
hoot.
anyway, that's what we do here, and we're lucky to do it. We try to make sure everybody has an experience, not just a deer hunt. And we're lucky. I think we've guided. I believe we've guided people from 34 different states and all walks of life. Some celebrities, some people that this was their one vacation for the year, and it doesn't matter. You know, if who you are or what you do, try to treat everybody the same. And our goal is my job is to get you close to a mature deer. And my job starts a long time before you show up, and it actually isn't over until you're gone. So it's a fun thing to get to do. I never get tired of learning from these whitetails. They just have always fascinated me. There's still a lot to learn, and I guess the thing that keeps me going is that I never get tired of it. When it does come together and we get that old mature buck outsmarted, and all the hard work that's gone into it gets paid off. You know, that's what keeps me going. That's what makes them 4 o'clock morning alarm clocks okay to deal with.
You want to give some shout outs to your sponsors and supporters? You got a couple minutes.
Absolutely,
Okay, have at it.
absolutely. Some of my main sponsors are Peak Antifreeze, Blue Def Diesel Additive, Herculiner Truck Bed Liners, Realtree, Ruger Firearms. They're a great sponsor, American made. Elite Archery. I've been with the Elite Archery for 8 or 9 years now. Yeti Coolers. So that's just B&W Trailer Hitches. The list goes on and on. And that's just some of my main sponsors. But I'll tell you what, the ones that probably don't get the recognition are my family, my friends that help. You know, they have to hear my complaints and put up with me when I'm tired and grumpy, and make this outfit run like a well-oiled machine. And so those are the ones that really need the thanks. And my clientele, you know, people like yourself that allow us to give us a platform to talk about what we do. And once again, circle all the way back around this conversation to Deer Week. That's what Deer Week's about, is being able to express and enjoy and celebrate this beautiful thing that we call deer hunting.
Thanks for that. Again, how does somebody get a hold of you, Tom?
By the arm, that was a joke.
I'm laughing.
That would be a good time to laugh. No, I'll tell you what, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at TM Kansas, like Tom McMillan, Kansas. Or to book a hunt or inquire about a hunt, you can email me through McMillan Outfitting at McMillanOutfitting.com. And that's the best way. I personally respond to every email. I can honestly say that sometimes it might take me a few days to get back to everybody, especially this time of year when hunting season's going on. But if you get an email from McMillan Outfitting, it's me typing it up. And I just appreciate all the interest and once again, the chance to talk about what we love to do, man.
Let's wrap it up with one more promo for Deer Week from the Sportsman Channel. Or
Absolutely.
you're on the Sportsman Channel.
You bet. Everybody needs to start tuning in on October 15th in the evening, every evening for that week, Deer Week, hashtag Deer Week. You can correspond with a lot of people on the networks, tagging your tweets and your Facebook posts with hashtag Deer Week. If you're not sure if you get the networks or not, you can go to both websites for the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel. There's a place you can type in your zip code, and it will tell you how to get channels. So this is something that everybody needs to tune into. We're going to have a lot of fun, share a lot of tips and tactics, a lot of hunting stories about hunting camp, the ones that got away, the ones that didn't get away, and it's going to be a real celebration. I'm looking forward to it.
Tom McMillan, on behalf of thousands of listeners to Whitetail Roundabout podcasts across North America, this has been a pure joy. And everybody told me, "Oh yeah, Tom's so funny," and you got me with by the arm.
Well, if they would have, see, you should have prefaced it. I could have been writing some jokes down. I would have worn a clown nose or, done this a little bit more. But one thing I always try to preach is, hunt hard but have fun. Yeah, I'm pretty much always a goofball, but what I do take pretty serious is chasing deer. And so when you get me on the deer subject, some of that goofiness, I hope, goes away, because I did get passionate about what goes into killing whitetails for sure.
No question of it. So again, Tom, thank you for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.